Welcome back to Truth Hurts, where we expose corrupt politicians and lying corporate media. I'm Jake Duesenberg, your host, broadcasting live from Roseville, Minnesota, in the belly beast, the liberal zombie apocalypse of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Joining me today is my good old friend from college, Dave Benner. You actually lived a mile away from here? I don't know. Is that 8 years ago? I can't remember how long it's been, but you used to live not too far, right in Roseville, Minnesota. Now you live...
I did. Went to cons all the time, man. Thanks for having me, by the way. I want to pump my fists like Jesse does in that intro, like get the energy going. Let's go.
You moved to Nashville, Tennessee, which I mistakenly thought was East Coast time earlier. It just misses, apparently. You moved there many years ago, land of much more freedom, although a lot of us don't like Minnesota. You never liked the winters here, so I understand that. Give people a little bit of background of who you are and why you're on the program today, because we're going to be talking about Epstein.
Oh, man. Well, I'm an independent journalist and content creator. I've spent most of my time actually researching antebellum era U.S. history, especially founding period up through the Civil War, but really interested in current events with a focus in particular on foreign policy. The Epstein scandal, the Epstein files, I follow that very closely. You can follow me on Liberty Vault on YouTube. That's my channel that I built up over this. But I've had a very big interest in the intersection of, constitutional issues, foreign policy issues, deep state issues, etc. And thanks for having me again.
250,000 subs, I think, on YouTube. So this is no small potatoes.
350,000, but
350,000. Okay, there you go. Yeah, who's counting right now? This is your book. I had the pleasure of actually being one of the editors in your first book, Compact to the Republic. I think it's a great book to start out with. You got Thomas Paine in there. There you go. You had one in between too. I can't even remember what it was. It was
the 14th Amendment and the Incorporation Doctrine, more of a booklet. But yeah, I've written several books about U.S. history, various facets.
Perfect, man. Okay, thank you so much. And by the way, for all full disclosure, Benner and I go way back. I mean, like 20 plus years back in college. Now, we both mistakenly got involved in politics in college on the wrong side of a very important issue, but we were stupid college students. What did we know about the Iraq War? Hey, George W. Bush couldn't steer us wrong. I think we both wised up and have become the men we are today. So this episode is brought to you by Alpine Country in the great city of St. Cloud, Minnesota. Also brought to you by Elite Guardian, mn.com. If you want to take your own protection and the protection of your family into your hands, join us. I think we got a concealed carry and home defense course on Black Friday. Black Friday, I think that's the 28th. If you want to come shoot with me, if you want to qualify for your Minnesota permit to carry requirements, but it's more than that, it's good training. Go to eliteguardianmn.com. Okay, big day, Benner. I think for people that have never watched my show before, you'll understand that, I don't play red team versus blue team. This isn't party politics. I cut through the bullshit. The show's called The Truth Hurts. I'm telling you what I believe to be true. Maybe it's not true in the end because the facts I had were wrong, but I believe it to be true. Otherwise, I wouldn't be telling it to you. And I criticize Republicans almost more, and I think it's because I sympathize with Republicans more these days as what I would consider like a traditional conservative or a libertarian, because the Republican Party has people like Rand Paul and his father, Ron Paul, which really kind of brought me back into politics when I got pretty jaded during the Great Recession. It also has guys like Thomas Massie, right? So the Democrats don't have anyone. Like, I can't look at the Democrat Party and go, oh, there's the solution, okay? Now, a little show note, because I'm so hard on Republicans, especially gubernatorial candidates in the state of Minnesota, because Tim Walz, I don't know if you know this, Benner, Tim Walz wants to run for a third term, which is unprecedented. It's never actually happened. No one's ever gotten elected third term. So he wants to run again to be governor of Minnesota. You would think, I mean, of course, Republicans are lining up, but they're not good. Like, these guys are not good. It's pretty pathetic, to be honest with you. And I think they don't even understand what the biggest issue in this next election is, which is clearly the unaffordable prices that almost everyone is experiencing. Like, they don't even know how to message on it, and I don't think they can, because they really haven't solved these things. And they got a real easy thing to message on. I have been reaching out to these campaigns And we had Brad Kohler on last week, but once again, I made the case he's a second, third tier candidate, and I still kind of think he is. But good for him for doing the show. He made his case. But some of these top campaigns, they won't actually come on the show. It seems very obvious they're dodging me. But next Tuesday, I actually got a Democrat who's running for U.S. Senate in Minnesota. Now, he talking about a third-tier candidate. He certainly seems that way, but seems like a nice gentleman. I have no idea where the conversations go, but we're going to have a conversation, okay? We'll figure this out. I want to see how he approaches the world of politics. He's very complimentary to what we do on this show. So I'm very critical of both sides, and I think on the Epstein files, dare I say the Democrats really have no authority on this issue. Maybe their messaging's good on it, okay, but they have no authority on it. We were all calling for the release of Epstein files under Biden. I mean, we were calling for it under Trump 1, right? Or Trump 45, I should say. I mean, Thomas Massie tweeted out during the Biden administration, for those people that listen to these stupid messages that are wrong, release the files now. This is under Biden. So this is not like something new. Now, why are we a little bit more noisy right now? Because a lot of us thought maybe Trump represented something different. That maybe, just maybe, a guy that almost had his head blown off on live TV and had lawfare done against him in many different states and basically can't do business in the city that, he basically grew up in, that just maybe this guy is going to represent something different and drain the swamp. So that's why we sound off, and we should have the votes now. And according to the vote that just occurred, because this is really interesting, we did the show at 2 p.m. Mostly because, partly because Benner wasn't available until then, but also because we just didn't have the vote was coming up in the 1 o'clock hour. So this is the vote, and I wish I knew how to get rid of my screen here. I don't even know how to do this stuff. This is why I had Dawson back in the day. Anyhow, the vote is, let's see here. Let's just get rid of the full screen. Now it shows up. Okay, so there's the vote. 427 to 1. We believe at this point, and we're doing this at 2:08 on Tuesday, so the roll call is not available. But we believe that the person that voted against it is Clay Higgins, because he actually tweeted out at 1:41 that he was a no vote on the bill. It says, "What was wrong with the bill 3 months ago is still wrong today. It bans 250 years of criminal justice procedure in America. As written, this bill reveals and injures thousands of innocent people, witnesses, people who provide alibis, family members, etc." Okay, better. Let's start there. That's what we've heard. This bill's not even important. Well, we've released 50,000 files. What are we making a big deal about? Nothing here.
Not at all. And certainly the victims that stood beside Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie in their press conference calling for this in the discharge petition that started this effort to divulge the truth, think otherwise. They wanted the truth. And I'm with you almost 100% of what you said, by the way. The Democrats have no ground to stand for here in the Biden administration, instead of trying to use the Epstein files and the Epstein scandal as a bludgeon against Trump. They chose the Russiagate facade, right? That engripped the nation for 2 to 3 years over falsities, while Trump was giving weapons to Ukraine, withdrawing from the INF treaty, slapping sanctions on Russia. They literally called him a Russian asset, right? But what they didn't do was divulge the Epstein scandal. And I think a lot of the Trump supporters are saying, and I don't think this is unreasonable to say, like, well, why didn't they divulge it if it was harmful to Trump back then? Well, I think the most plausible scenario, Occam's razor, choosing the most plausible scenario, is they're all implicated. There's people in the political elite that are implicated on both sides of whatever, political tribe dichotomy you want to draw around this thing. So yeah, this is important, and I think it behooves us to say that this would not happen if it were not for Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie, because the Democrats were willing to vote for this, but Trump was whipping his support in line, trying to use whatever political tricks he could not to get this out. First calling it a Democratic hoax, then saying, there's nothing there, then saying it's boring, then truth socialing that, you're not my real supporter if you want answers here, even while victims stand beside Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene. He only acquiesced a few days ago because his hand was forced. It would look horrible optically, even more so than it does now, which is hard to even imagine, but it would if he dug his heels on this and said, don't vote for this bill, don't divulge the truth, and you had like 100 Republicans defecting, which looks like it would have had. So this is interesting, but even beyond this, the disclosures that we've seen in the recent month have told us a lot more than the pieces of the puzzle we had before that. So that's my general thought.
Okay, I want you to hold that thought here because you brought up the timeline. I'm going to go through that for people, but I don't want you to forget about what you just said about disclosures because you got a unique angle. And you and I were chatting on the phone on Friday, and you had said some stuff I wasn't even aware of. So I thought that's very fascinating. So don't let me forget to bring that up with you. I think I only have you for about 30
Sure.
minutes. So you mentioned, first of all, the Trump pivot. This is audio from uh, Air Force One on November 14th. Was that Thursday or Friday? I think that might be Thursday. So this is what he says on related to this bill.
Why was your team encouraging Congressman Boebert, Congresswoman Mace to not pursue
Because
this?
we think it's bad to talk about it because it gets away from the subject of how well the Republicans are doing. We have the greatest economy. We have the largest
Greatest
investment
economy.
ever made in our country's history. We have all of these great things happen. We have very little inflation, whereas he had record-setting, the biggest inflation in history. All of these things are good. And when you talk about the Epstein hoax, what happens is you're not talking about how well we've done. Mr. President, on that subject, that's the whole purpose behind them. They want to waste people's time, and some of the dumber Republicans like that.
Okay, they're just wasting people's time. Why even bother doing? Then of course on let's see here. This is Friday night. What a fun weekend that was, right? I'm withdrawing my support endorsement of Congresswoman. I've seen this a bunch of times, and I just noticed why does he put in quotations Congresswoman? What is he insinuating there? Marjorie Taylor Greene, now who he's calling Marjorie Trader Greene, of the great state of Georgia. Over the past few weeks, despite my creating record achievements for our country, including a total blah blah blah, you know what it goes. He basically is unendorsing, and then eventually calls her a traitor. Then he goes further and he says to about Massie. Did Thomas Massie sometimes refer to as Rand Paul Jr. because of the fact that he always votes against the Republican Party? Not true. Get married already? Boy, that was quick. No wonder the polls have him at less than 8% chance of winning the election. Anyway, have a great life, Thomas. And question mark, his wife will soon find out that she's stuck with a loser. Now, I wrote on my Facebook, like, what kind of retard took over the social media account of Donald Trump? I mean, like, listen, no one's ever said Trump sounds presidential, but like, what are you doing? You're going after like your number one supporter. I mean, MTG's like your biggest supporter in Congress. And then you take a low blow on Thomas Massie, a guy who literally lost his wife, like shockingly a year ago, like tragically. And then, I mean, God forbid he remarry and not be alone the rest of his life. And by the way, Trump, maybe you know something about getting remarried. You've done it a couple times, right? And by the way, your wife didn't pass away. You just dumped them. So, like, what a ridiculous thing to say. And so you could tell that he's got this, like, oh man, this thing's really causing me political pain to lash out in such a stupid way. And then of course alluded to on the Air Force One, he actually brought Boebert and maybe Mace too, but they brought him to the situation room, like in a classified setting. Like, it's crazy. What the hell were you doing there? And it didn't work. They were still on board with their vote against Trump. So then, as you mentioned, Benner, then it's the complete pivot at the end, and he tweets out, God, what was that, Sunday night, whatever it was? As I said on Friday night aboard Air Force One to the fake news media, House Republicans should vote to release Epstein files because we have nothing to hide and it's time to move on from this Democrat hoax perpetrated by the radical left lunatics in order to deflect from the great success of the Republican Party. Okay, no one believes you that you've always said that, and it's a complete 180. And as we just saw the vote, it then all of a sudden became unanimous. What say you, Benner?
Well, I say that if you're reversing your position and you have nothing to hide, what were the last 11 months? It was 11 months of tomfoolery, skullduggery, Washington trickery, the Binders Gate controversy, which is absurd. And then you're going to have the DOJ and FBI author a joint memo saying he didn't have any clients. There's no file releases, no evidence of blackmail. No, this, base has turned on Trump, at least part of this base, more than any other issue, on Trump's duplicity in this. And I'm not saying I have the door wide open when it comes to whether or not Trump was implicated in actual Epstein crimes or not. But at the very least, he's guilty of helping to cover this up for 11 months. So at worst, he engaged in a cover up because of something that's embarrassing in those files and in those documents. And at worst, he was involved. Now, I don't necessarily think that. I think that the way that Epstein has behaved, according to these disclosures, lead me to believe that he completely hated Trump by the end, to the point that he was working with Democratic Congressman Stacey Plaskett, or I forgot.
I was going to cue that up. Yes, that's crazy.
Literally texting her during a committee hearing, telling her what to say to defense attorney Michael Cohen, Trump's attorney at the time, to try to ruin him over Russiagate. He also talked to discredited biographer Michael Wolff, trying to see how they could blackmail Trump and get the worst of him after some of his debate performances. So it's hard for me to believe that he actually had like compromising photos of Trump if that didn't get out to Michael Wolff and this is what he had done. But at the same time, we know a lot more about the associations to Epstein in Israel. And I think it's more likely that the embarrassment that would befall us is in regard to what I consider an unholy alliance between the United States and Israel, that are the connections between Epstein and Israel that have become all more clear in the last month, and there might be more like that.
Yeah, and maybe all the stuff, which is obviously what, and you and I were chatting before we went live, just like this breakdown in MAGA world, this infighting. Oh, it's always infighting. It's like, well, what's the future of MAGA look like? And there's going to be naturally infighting, but it does seem to be over Israel. And to the point where like Tucker Carlson and MTG are no longer MAGA to people. Like, come on, are you serious? This is ridiculous. So, all right. Tom Emmer. Let's put the Minnesota angle on it. Oh, by the way, if you guys want to interrupt me at any time, you can hit that Rumble rant button, and I will go live to your comments. I do see some comments in your Rad Trad. Sorry, I missed everyone's comments here. I see T. Walls there. O'Bannon, good to see you. Tucker, I'm sure, is there. Gunner is there. Thank you so much. Rad Trad says, "What does MAGA Jesse think about all this? Time to rip off my Trump Vance bumper sticker off my old Camry." I don't know what Jesse thinks about all this stuff. When Jesse and I are talking all the time, we are a lot focused on Minnesota politics, and so I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I give him the platform, but he's kind of wanting to do other things. What did I have here? Crucified. He's going to withhold valuable information. That is a scary thing. That they've had plenty of time. They've delayed this vote for so long. So that is a concern.
How much of this will be classified material or redacted to the point that we won't learn anything? That is a concern.
Yes, right. Okay, so let's get into this. Tom Emmer did actually do, let's see, is this Halprin's show? I think this was on Thursday, I believe. And he was asked point blank, how are you going to vote on this? So here we go. This is the majority whip, Tom Emmer.
The Epstein matter. Very rare to have a successful so-called discharge petition where a majority of the members sign something that say we want a bill on the floor, not brought on by the leadership. That's going to happen. There'll be a vote. I've heard people say there might be 25 Republicans who vote for this, even though only a handful signed the discharge petition. I've heard people say up to 100. You're the whip. How many House Republicans do you suspect will vote for this piece of legislation calling for disclosure of Epstein documents?
We don't whip discharge petitions. Whatever happens, it's pretty much a done deal. It'll be voted on next week. I think Mike Johnson would have had it up for a vote last night if it wasn't the fact that he had to reopen government.
Oh, Benner, I totally forgot this thing. I believe Mike Johnson tried pulling unanimous consent on this thing the other day, and the Democrats were against it. He's like, well, if they really cared about it, they would have voted for it. I'm like, no, dipshit. We want a roll call vote on the damn thing, right? So they tried getting away with it before even Trump did it.
I'm so glad you know about that, because that has been spun really hard right now.
Yeah, it's utterly ridiculous. And it's like, oh my God, this is the problem, is these guys are all such freaking liars. And most people don't understand the lies that they're doing. But literally, they were just trying to pass this thing off without any record. In fact, they weren't going to do the recorded vote. The Democrats actually asked for the roll call vote. So then it took 15 minutes. They were actually going to pass it by unanimous consent again. And eventually, because that's how it works, is you can ask for a roll call vote. Most people don't know that. Actually, in the Minnesota House, you need 15 representatives to ask for a roll call vote. Otherwise, there's not a recorded vote, which is so ridiculous, except for the final passage of bills. So that's how they get away with killing stuff, or, not being transparent, because these guys don't want to be transparent. All right, I continue on here with Emmer.
Night, Monday morning. It'll get voted next week. The interesting thing about this, Mark, is Democrats are trying to argue that this is about something more than just Donald Trump. Well, they showed us again in the last couple of days. Almost 60,000 documents have now been published by the House Oversight Committee, including all of the records from the Epstein estate. And what do the Democrats do? They cherry-picked 3 records that mention Donald Trump out of the 60-some thousand, and guess what? They redact the name of an actual public victim who has exonerated Trump and said he did absolutely nothing wrong. So their whole goal is to attack Trump. Republicans are more interested in the victims, making sure that they get justice on the people that...
Okay, I'm going to stop it there, and then I got a doozy from Tom Emmer, but better, just how funny is that? It's like, he's not wrong about how phony the Democrats are. But the idea that the Republicans are good here is ridiculous. Why have you been stalling this for so long?
Totally agree. As his no vote, if everything's been disclosed, why did you vote yes today? And we all know Trump's hand was forced. There was one thing he said there that was accurate that I want to give him credit for. Believe it or not, I'm not a fan, but he is right. The mainstream news media coverage on this has been preposterously bad in terms of the one email that blanks out Virginia Giuffre's name involving, Epstein's claim in a leaked email saying, Trump was alone with Virginia Giuffre, implying that when the mainstream media reported on this, that he was guilty of crimes against Virginia Giuffre. But Giuffre was deposed 5 years after that email in 2016 and did repudiate any claims that Trump had either made advances on her or hit on her. That is fair. That's a fair criticism of how this has been covered. But at the same time, why wouldn't you want more disclosures to show what crimes actually took place, especially when it was J.D. Vance, it was Donald Trump Jr., it was Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and Dan Bongino making careers out of this under Biden's regime. And when Trump exercised his discretion to elevate some of those people to prominence, like Kash Patel and like Bondi, that's what people expected, whether or not Trump himself focused on it a lot. He actually didn't during the campaign trail. I'll say that, but his subordinates who he elevated did.
Listen, innocent people will have their name tarnished here, right? I mean, like Ellen Dershowitz. I mean, listen, when he got that massage from the underage girl, his underwear was still on. I mean, let's make that a matter of the record here. By the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's literally what Ellen Dershowitz said.
He literally said that.
Literally said it. I assume there was an underage girl. I guess maybe I'm wrong on that, but he got a massage at Epstein's place in New York City. God, now I gotta be careful because it's Alan Dershowitz. It was definitely, he admitted to getting a massage. We'll assume it was underage, but I guess we'd have to look at the fact. But he said literally his underwear was still on, so everything's above board on that one. Benner, now that I recall, when I got that massage from those people that you invite over to your house, because we do that. It's very common at your place, right? I mean, everyone does this. They have massages at people's houses. Come over. They got massages here. What the hell?
So absurd, man. And Dershowitz is really one of the only accused that has actually been outspoken about their positions on the accusations. Leon Black hasn't, Ehud Barak hasn't, others that Giuffre accused haven't responded. It's interesting that Dershowitz did, and thinking that would help him or take the spotlight off possible misdeeds by him. That's weird.
Yeah. All right. So Tom Emmer actually says how he'll vote in this upcoming vote. This is obviously last week, Thursday. So the vote just happened. We're on Tuesday at 2:25.
Do you vote for the legislation when it comes up, personally?
No, I'm not going to vote for it.
Why not?
I don't vote for discharge petitions.
Well, would you support the underlying premise of the legislation?
That ship has sailed. In my opinion, that is all about politics. That is Democrats with a couple of Republicans that, Yeah, I think the Republicans' hearts are in the right places, but I think they're being used by Democrats who are not interested in the victims and justice. They're interested in going after Donald Trump. And I say that.
The problem is here, Benner, it's you and I. Our heart's in the right place. We're just too dumb to understand what Tom Emmer knows. We're just being used as pawns by the Democrats.
It just doesn't make sense when the Democrats didn't do this under Biden. If they just wanted to hurt Trump, and I'm no fan of the Democrats, their hands are tarnished on this too. And there were only a few Democrats that supported any kind of disclosures during the Biden administration. I'll give Ron Wyden credit. He's one of the only Democrats that have called to release these records that the Department of the Treasury has that indicate wire transfer records between Epstein and people of prominence that only him and Marsha Blackburn and other senators' offices have even viewed. He wants that to be available to all senators and the public. He did call for that during Biden's term. I'll give him credit on that. But essentially the rest of the Democrats were silent. And if they wanted to use this against Trump, they could have under Biden. They didn't.
Right, exactly. All right, so Tom Emmer, of course, he's got the very principled position. He does not vote for discharge petitions. I mean, I'll have you guys know that. That is the principle we all care about. Turns out that's not even true. Oh, shoot, I didn't have this queued up. I did ask ChatGPT on this, and I did post this here. One second. Where are we? Right here. According to ChatGPT, Tom Emmer has voted for discharge petitions in the past. A discharge petition is a mechanism used in the U.S. House of Representatives that allows members to bring a bill to the floor for a vote, bypassing the usual committee process if it has been stuck there for a period of time. It requires signatures of the majority of House members. I'm glad that we used AI to come up with this, because then it's like, oh, yeah, I remember this. In 2018, for example, Emmer, a Republican representing Minnesota's 6th District, was one of the Republicans who signed a discharge petition to force a vote on immigration reform when House leadership was not bringing the issue to the floor. This was seen as an attempt to bypass the leadership's control over the legislative agenda and to address issues related to the Deferred Action for Children Arrival, which is a DACA program, and other immigration measures. Thank you, AI, for that one. Now, Action for Liberty got in the Star Tribune again today. This organization, some people say is irrelevant, scammers, whatever you want to call it, seems to get a lot of press when it comes to Republican politics. Geez, big shocker. Maybe there's a lot of us and we're demanding answers. This is let's see what the Star Tribune, Minnesota House Republicans keep mum ahead of Epstein files vote. And it references Emmer's good friend, Michelle Fischbach. Benner, I don't know how well you know this, but obviously Emmer kind of leads the political sphere of influence when it comes to federal politics in the state of Minnesota. Obviously, they're most powerful in the U.S. House. So he's got a bunch of, he's got his hands all over these 3 Congress men and 1 woman that are in the delegation on the Republican side. Of course, the Democrats can care less what Emmer thinks. And this reads, unlike the rest of the state's GOP House members, Representative Michelle Fischbach had to reject the releasing the files multiple times from her position on the House Rules Committee. Her votes angered some in the right-wing activist space that's dominated Republican politics in her district, including the conservative group Action for Liberty, which warned that the Epstein issue could be, quote, the straw that breaks the camel's back for conservatives. By the way, I think this isn't the one that breaks the camel's back. I think it's actually more to do with prices. However, I do think this is what lost a lot of people like me thinking you guys are full of shit. Now, this is Action for Liberty's article. This is Maggie Jesse wrote July 15th, going after Michelle Fischbach. And here you see the Rules Committee vote, record vote number 149, where she voted against the release of the records related to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Benner, when you read Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna's bill, which got voted on, and it got voted on pretty much unanimously today. Only one person abstaining. One person not voting, or one person voting against it, and I think 5 that didn't vote. When you read it, isn't this something that Trump could actually do right now? Right? Like, if he's a supporter of this, can he not just make these files available within the next 30 days without this thing passing Congress?
He absolutely can, and he could have had those instructions. In fact, that seemed to be his initial instructions, at least if you pay attention to how this story was covered back in, March, that Trump had ordered Pam Bondi, the head of the DOJ, the Attorney General, to sift through these records for publication. Trump had essentially ordered that, and somewhere down the line, they decided, no, there's nothing here, nothing to see. It's a Democratic hoax, what have you, after Bindersgate. So, yeah, Trump could do this. I think the only reason he doesn't now, even though his hand is clearly forced at this point, there are going to be way too many Republican defectors, is that he was so entrenched and dug in with a long paper trail on social media about saying that this is a Democratic hoax. And then if he releases, it's even worse optically than having his hand forced now in some ways. But I think this is going to hurt him in either direction. He could legitimately become a lame duck over this issue alone, even though this was not at the top of his agenda, just because of how he's handled it, how people around him have told him to handle it.
Now, I personally think, and I think this has done a lot of damage to Trump, no doubt about it, and I don't regret being tough on him from day one, because when it comes to blackmailing the world leaders and politicians, most likely from a foreign government, it really seems like it's Israeli intelligence, could be British intelligence, could be American intelligence, could be all three of those things. I think blackmailing politicians, especially allowing a serial pedophile to get off, like literally he got off when he was prosecuted in 2006, I think it was. I mean, the punishment did not fit the crime, and then still had access to these people after being basically a convicted sex trafficker. So I think that's a damn important issue. But I do want to say that next November, and it'll probably be the next 2 Novembers, the election will come down to the unaffordability of life in America. And so that's really what I believe Trump's biggest decline will be in the MAGA coalition, is if they don't actually solve this issue. And the only way you solve that issue, in my opinion, and I'm exhaustive on this, is you have got to realize that we have an unaffordable government that's being propped up by printing money to try to solve these things, enormous debt and printing money. And until you stop that, until you have a government that lives within its own means, so to speak, so you don't exceed revenues, you're just not going to solve rising prices, right? Okay. I'm a little bit past the half hour. You gave me a half hour. I really want to hear.
We have more
okay,
time.
Perfect. Because we got a great live audience. Most people watch this after the fact. I think people really love what you have to say here. You actually scrubbed through this release files last week that didn't exist. And so you had some interesting takes on this that I don't think a lot of people in the mainstream media covered. So what are those?
Yeah, and to be clear, some of the independent media has covered some of these things, and a lot of these things, some of which I am drawing from them. So I want to give credit to, in particular, Drop Site News. Ryan Graham and Murtaza Hussein have uncovered, even in the last month, 4 ironclad connections between Epstein and Israel in terms of Epstein literally worked for Israel. Remember when they said that was a conspiracy theory? There's nothing to it. You don't have the proof. Well, we do have the proof, and I'll list those things very quickly. Number 1, he drafted at least one speech that was used by Ehud Barak, his good friend. It used to be the prime minister of Israel. Also, he was the head of IDF intelligence. And at that time, when Epstein drafted this speech, Ehud Barak in 2014 was the defense minister. Literally drafted a speech for,
and lived at his residence in New York too.
Yeah, he lived for prolonged periods at Epstein's house, 30 visits to New York in the house that Les Wexner gave,
right.
Epstein for reasons we still don't know.
Right.
Number 2, Epstein was working on a wire transfer with one of Israel's top spies. His name was Yoni Koren, and was emailing to confirm bank account information for that wire transfer. That's number 2, close connection with an Israeli spy that's known to be an Israeli spy. 3 and 4, Epstein was the key figure in brokering a security arrangement between Israel's government and Mongolia's government. And he was also the key broker on behalf of Israel's government for a security agreement between Israel and the Ivory Coast. So these 4 things in tandem show beyond all doubt an association with Israel, literally working for Israel. So if you're going to say that this is still a conspiracy theory, it's the same kind of conspiracy theory that, the Wuhan lab leak was false. The NIA didn't support that. Nothing to see there. It's just true.
Safe and effective.
That's
Dave.
one thing. I also have a
Effective.
Steve
Hold on,
Bannon.
we got a rumble rant. I got to
Yeah,
interrupt you, Dave. This is from Gunner. Dave, why does Israel blackmail and control our foreign policy? What's their aim? How do we solve our Epstein files? Key removing APEC influence.
Well, I think they may contain things that would be embarrassing to this relationship. That's my biggest, suspicion based upon what has been released already, what there is. And it's just because of the power of the Israel lobby. People don't realize how powerful this lobby is. And if you want to read a great book on this, that was incredibly prophetic and mind-blowing for the time in which it came out. I think it came out in 2004. No, 2007. It's John Mearsheimer and Stephen Walt's book, The Israel Lobby. And it's absolutely fantastic. It shows the stranglehold of power that this lobby has on American politicians, where even though the U.S. has given them $30 billion in the last 2 years, Israel seems to exercise more influence over our own government than the United States exercises any kind of leverage over Israel by a long stretch. And it's so clear. You see it in starting the Iran war on the basis of Israel's desires, despite the fact that they weren't a threat to the United States. It's bankrolling, I know this is going to be controversial, what I consider to be a genocide in Gaza. It's siding with them in Syria to depose Assad on behalf of Israel's preference of an al-Qaeda leader, al-Shara, instead of Assad.
Who's made a trip to the White House now.
It's deposing Gaddafi in Libya on the basis that Israel didn't want Gaddafi in power. And I'm not saying there aren't complicit people that aren't Zionists. There were neocons in America. Most of them are Zionists that wanted the same thing. But it is this influence that is just, tarnishing our political system and robbing us of our sovereignty. It's not America first. It's Israel first.
Okay, so you had more on the disclosure. You might have still been on Israel, and so that was a very relevant question, Gunner. But the rules are Rumble Rants do interrupt us at any time. So continue on with that.
One more really interesting angle I think your audience might be interested in, and we can even go further, but Steve Bannon plays into this too. Because Steve Bannon was a close associate to Epstein up until the bitter end, until Epstein killed himself, right? He maintained an email correspondence with Epstein. And the most interesting thing I've seen, and apparently Steve Bannon, by the way, is sitting on about 15 hours of footage in an interview with Epstein that was going to be a documentary but never released, is the two remained close even after Bannon was ejected from the Trump administration. And this is the thing that is just blowing my mind, is after Steve Bannon was dislodged from the Trump administration, he emailed Epstein saying, hey, how can we get rid of Jerome Powell? He's the current Federal Reserve Chairman, as you know, and Steve Mnuchin. He was the Treasury Secretary, which you know. Mnuchin was actually a Goldman Sachs exec that Bannon worked with at Goldman Sachs.
Come on.
Yeah. No, you can never believe it. No one in the Treasury would
tell me that Supreme Court justice graduated from Harvard and Yale Law School. Come on.
Yeah, but so he's literally emailing to say, how do we get rid of these two people? One of which that he worked with at Goldman Sachs, by the way. This is 2019, I believe. It might have been 2018. I think it was 2019 that this email was from. And that shows that, man, it looks like Epstein was collecting dirt on people, but that's just one layer. A layer above is something you mentioned, Jake, as you said. How many people of prominence continued to communicate with this guy, despite the fact that he was a convicted sex offender with 40 witnesses against him getting that sweetheart deal in 2008? That is mind-blowing.
Terry Time is a premium insider, and I want to bring this up because she goes, what, Steve Bannon? I think she's shocked by this news. Now, I had known about this, but I had thought it was maybe Steve Bannon doing just a documentary on Epstein, maybe from a independent position, or maybe a hit job on him. But you think it's more. You think that there was actually like a working relationship, so they were very cordial.
I think that there was a long-term correspondence between Bannon and Epstein up until the end. And I see Terry mentioned Epstein was in the Trump administration. Prove it. I do not believe you. That wasn't my claim. I can see how you might have misinterpreted it. I'm saying that Bannon was part of the original Trump administration. First term. Bannon was ejected, and Bannon kept a long-term relationship up with Epstein until the end. It's just irrefutable at this point.
Yeah, and Trump's transportation secretary actually was the prosecutor in Florida.
Labor secretary,
labor. Sorry.
And the way where we get the words of Alex Acosta when he said, and this is part of the court record, that I was told Epstein was intelligence and left him alone as reasons for why he got that sweetheart deal. Despite that, he was elevated to the labor secretary under the Trump administration.
Right. So it's his administration did have ties with it. So did the Clintons. So did Obama's. So this isn't like not piling on Trump here. It's just
Yeah,
that
we can talk about Clinton
this
next
is
if
why
you
this
want.
is so damn important, is because this guy has permeated the political landscape in the United States at the highest levels, because what was Bannon, a senior advisor to the president? I mean, like, literally got the ear of the president. And
Conway.
then you get a secretary, so you got someone in the cabinet. And that's just in the Trump administration. We can go all day long in the Biden administration. Well, you just referenced earlier that a congresswoman, she's actually it's an interesting position. She's actually a delegate, right? Because she's from U.S. Virgin Islands, but literally is getting texted from Jeffrey Epstein in congressional testimony. And just for you guys that still are trapped in the red versus blue mentality, she's on the blue side. So listen, I mean, we know Bill Clinton went to Epstein's Island. We know he was on the Lolita Expressway, right? Don't we know that?
We know he was on his plane. The Secret Service denies that he ever went to the island, but other people think he did. This is one of the things I don't know that we'll ever know. We know that he was on the flight logs to some extent.
A lot. I think it was like 20 some times.
Yeah,
right.
Times.
And by the way, I think we all know Bill Clinton's proclivities, so no one's really shocked by that. Well, but he had access to Bill Clinton.
He did. Can I just talk about that for 1 minute?
Go ahead.
More and more has come out about his association with Clinton, specifically from Clinton's first term in office. In 1993, he had 14 visits to the White House during Clinton's first term. They were arranged by a guy named Mark Middleton. And if you don't believe this story, it's going to blow your mind if you haven't heard about this. Google Mark Middleton. He was the aide that worked for Clinton that arranged these meetings between Epstein and Clinton. That guy, once information started to come out about his association with Clinton and the fact that he visited the Clinton White House under his direction, he mysteriously committed suicide. How? He was hanging by a belt with a shotgun blast through his chest as well. They claim that he shot himself with a shotgun through his chest and hung himself at the same time. The same way a lot of figures associated with the Epstein case have died, right? And we're supposed to act like there's nothing going on here, right? But that is true. That is the association with Clinton beyond what you might have heard.
Okay. Anything else from this recent release that you thought was worth noting, or things that the media missed?
Yeah, the thing that I think is really interesting, and I touched upon it a little bit earlier, that it very much is clear that Epstein was working with blackmail. Blackmail was his modus operandi, whether or not you think he had it on prominent figures about their sex escapades, their illicit ones with underage girls or not. He was clearly working with Michael Wolff to try to undermine Trump, try to dig up dirt on Trump. So if I'm to say anything, I don't necessarily believe that if he was willing to go those lengths with Michael Wolff, with Stacey Plaskett, like we said, that he actually had damning photos toward Trump. Otherwise, he would have handed them out. Because it's clear that he despised Trump by that time. So if there's any Trump fans, taking light at this, you might have it there. I don't think that we wouldn't have seen something like that if he didn't have it at that time.
Well, and I do think that leads us to believe that Trump is protecting people. And I think, O'Bannon's asking who are the people? It seems pretty obvious it's people in his circle. Maybe it's not even political, but it probably is political too.
Potentially, I think the behavior is explained by protecting people that are maybe close to him. And same with the Democrats. They didn't divulge this for a reason too. I think it implicates people across the business, political landscapes in general.
Okay, I did say earlier, I do think the election is going to come down to the unaffordability of life in America. A big story, and I almost did this today, but the vote was today, and so I decided to go with that. But I wanted to talk about property taxes increasing in basically every county in the state of Minnesota. I mean, this is a huge issue. I know Washington County is going up. I know cities all over. This is a problem with rising prices because not only do we feel that in our own pocketbook, but we also see that governments at the local level feel that pain, and therefore to afford their level of government, they have to spike the levies, they have to spike the taxes. So it's just a perpetuating problem that we're all dealing with. I do think that is the issue, that most people will go to the polls in a year from now. But this Epstein issue to me is so important as well, because I do think that this is, if it's so evident that he was blackmailing people and that he worked for other intelligence agencies and got off, we have a right to know all this kind of stuff. And yet today is a celebration because Thomas Massie was very successful. This is a political win. There can be no mistake about it. Trump exhausted tremendous political capital. So did Mike Johnson, who really doesn't seem to have any kind of core beliefs at all. They exhausted so much political capital and they failed. And now they're saving face. And I don't think I've ever seen Trump have to save face like this. I've never seen him. Right? He's not a loser, right? So we get the House and they voted, and you guys saw the vote. And the next step, Benner, is it has to even be taken up by the Senate. So there's number one. The Senate has to take it up. Maybe they don't. But even if they do, and then it passes the Senate, you assume all Democrats vote in favor, plus you would assume there's a handful of Republicans at least. Then it has to end up at Trump's desk, which he has to sign. He could always renege on it, although it is veto-proof technically right now in the House. But then they could exercise that will. Who knows? And then meanwhile, all this stuff. So there's two off-ramps. The third off-ramp is, and there's evidence. I know Epstein's brother is saying this. You may have seen it, that they're trying to scrub the list right now.
Yeah.
But that just seems common sense. This thing was supposed to come up a while ago, right? The government shut down, and therefore we couldn't actually move forward on this very important matter. I mean, even if this all comes out, like, the government might just not make it available anyhow.
Yeah, they've had 11 months to scrub it. And for the record, I'm totally with you on what I think the crux of 2026 and 2028 will be about. It is affordability. And man, again, your audience might hate me, but I'm sorry. Mondami, no matter how bad he is, and he is bad, he's wretched, he's a socialist, but he at least pinpointed the issues that his constituency is facing, and it is affordable. Right. His prescription is abhorrent. It's abominable. But at the same time, you can see why he and Spanberger in Virginia were making that the issue, because that is a winning issue. That 100%. Is our struggle.
That's where the people are right now. So I got Billy Nord coming on the podcast in a week. Okay. And I don't know much about him other than he's a Democrat. And I think he leans on the socialist side. And it seems like we'll probably get along, and we'll probably both identify the problem, because I watched one interview he had it with David Cross, the actor that played Tobias on Arrested Development. Oh, that guy was one of the best characters ever. and that they sound like they're like Democrat socialists. So I'm just, if I'm predicting it, and we'll see where this interview goes, but like, we'll both agree on the problem, just like Mondani. The problem is, if you understand what caused the problem, it was politicians and agents of the state, and their solution is more government agents and more agents of the state. Like, no, that's the wrong way to go. Like, if you really want to afford, depreciation's actually the more natural thing. Deflation is the more natural thing, because over time, when the marketplace works and corporations get better at producing things and more efficient, there's a downward pressure on prices, like you see in the tech industry.
But that was the status quo before the age of central banking, Jake. Right. Exactly that. The currency gained in value, but because we have the central bank to just print bills at the whims of the people in power that are unlegislated, it just imposes one of the worst and most callous taxes. That is the tax of inflation. Mm-hmm. And then when you're spending on top of it all, it's compounding the same issue. So Mondami is totally wrong about the solution. It's to, nationalize, or I should say stateize, grocery stores and have more price controls and ramp up minimum wage. No, that's more of the central planning that led us down this road to hell in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely off the topic of Epstein, or was it really? He was in finance. So there you go. There's the tie-in. But I mean, it does seem to me, Benner, when I really started like getting off the Trump train, so to speak, and you know me, I never was really a Trump guy, but like I made I think a real compelling argument why I was going to vote for Trump last November. My only argument for Kamala was, if the ship is going to sink, let it be my enemy, or who people attribute as my enemy, to be the captain. So that that is how I see this playing. If the Republicans don't fix this thing and they just don't seem capable of fixing it, then literally that's what the solution will be by the Democrats, and we will get way worse, like way worse. Like socialism is here to stay.
It's reactionary socialism. It
Right.
provides them an avenue for which to plunge us even deeper into the abyss that we're treading right now. I totally agree with that. And to be frank, too, I want to be, cordial to you and say I understood, the dissidents, perspective on favoring Trump over Harris. I didn't share that, but I'm not here to boast about whatever happened. Like, I understood that there was nothing that the Democrats were giving us, and a lot of good promises in the form of rhetoric that Trump was giving us, ending the Ukraine war day one, $2 trillion in Doge cuts, which has turned out to be a total fraud.
Right.
Stopping the possibility of new wars like the neocons proposed. Another broken promise. You can say that he stopped a lot of illegal immigration, not necessarily by policy, but by optics. It doesn't seem like many people want to risk their lives to do that. But in terms of deportations, he hasn't deported as many people per year than even Obama did. I don't think that's something a lot of his base knows. So even if you're on board with that agenda, a lot of the broken promises have been bad beyond Epstein. And the affordability thing, I do think, is at the heart of the American soul that is going to feel these issues and vote accordingly to them.
Well, and then he insults you and tells you that, well, this is one of the greatest economies. It's just not. Like, no one believes you. Like, you're actually hurting your people. Like, your people are not rich, wealthy people. That actually, I think there was this study. It was like the top 2/3 of wealth were voting for Kamala or something like that. It was like very skewed. So like things actually really turned from the days of Jack Kennedy.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, like, I don't see him solving that issue, and that's what we're going to get. Is we're going to get these socialist solutions, which are really, really bad. And I'll be interested in asking this Democrat on the show. Like, I mean, literally, that's the way I look at it. Is if you understand the problem, I hope you understand the problem. Maybe he just doesn't understand the problem, but if you understand the problem, then the solution can't be more of it. Like, that just can't be the solution. This isn't a free market system. It's not the free markets that's caused this problem. The Federal Reserve is not a free market system. No way.
Yeah, people say that that's a private bank. It came to fruition by an act of Congress where the president decides the head of the board, and they have a legal monopoly on legal tender currency bestowed upon them by the government. It's not a private industry. It's a cartel created by state and corporate collaboration to our detriment.
Okay, I got a couple more minutes here. I'm so sorry, but I'm steering this conversation. Napkin Nate wants to know, was Epstein a creator of Bitcoin and will it crash? And I just thought, this is such a funny question because Benner is a proponent of Bitcoin or of cryptocurrency. What are your thoughts on that?
Not crypto, only Bitcoin. And
only
Bitcoin enthusiasts will correct you on that. But I mean, technically Bitcoin is a crypto, but it stands above and beyond to maximalists who believe that it's, by far the most superior one because of its finite supply and other factors of it. But it is true from the disclosures. There is some evidence that Epstein supported Bitcoin in its infancy, or at least the development, or, having that catch on. There's not that much on that, but you can find a few emails indicating that. That's for sure.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, he had his hand in a lot of things. We'll put it that way. I mean, if people don't know, and there's so many good resources, I'm sure you have them, Benner. So you're at Liberty Vault on YouTube. God, I looked up your name just the other day. It's just funny. If you look up just your name on YouTube, it will go back to you doing like the East Metro Tea Party with me back in the day. So, yeah, you've been giving speeches on issues of liberty for a long time. You're one of the OGs, in my opinion, of this new age influencer culture. But there's a lot of good influencers that you and I follow. But boy, that's really sad to see some of these people they might be getting a little bit of money on the side, by the way, from nefarious sources, by the way. Billy22 says, finite supply. Shit, you made coffee come out of my nose.
Hey,
well, it does. That is
not the US dollar.
Yeah, not the dollar, referring to Bitcoin. That is the value in it, is the finite. All right, so I appreciate it very much, Benner. Thank you so much for doing this show. You can go to Liberty Vault on YouTube, and then it's at dbenner83 at Twitter?
Yeah, should be on the screen. That's my Twitter. Please do subscribe to me on YouTube and subscribe to me on the Twitter if you like this. If you want to know more about Epstein, I'm not just going to plug myself. Whitney Webb is amazing on this. Drop Site News is amazing on this. Sean Atwood is amazing on this. Mike Benz is great on this.
Yeah.
Daryl Cooper is great on this. Those are just 5 names that if you really want to deep dive into Epstein, those are the people to follow.
And speaking of Ryan Graham, I did play Breaking Points. They had the good audio because it was on Air Force One. So I had cleaned up the audio. That's what I played. And so Graham fills in on the left side on Breaking Points. They've been very good, to their credit, on the Epstein list for months. It actually is interesting. Those of us in media that have talked about this thing, basically, since January, to be honest with you, we'll just say since Epstein list release 1, whatever the hell that was.
Release 1, phase 1.
But God, if you could write a book about this year. But those of us have stayed on it, like, thank God, because this was something that some people thought would die, and a lot of things in politics is people just hope it'll go away and we'll move on. Although I will say, once again, this next election will be about affordability. Epstein list will be a marginal part of it. So, but it is what it is. I think right is right, and we need to understand who the hell is being blackmailed by Jeffrey Epstein inside of our own government.
Amen, man. I'm with you. I really appreciate you having me. I love your show. You guys do great coverage. You guys do some of the best grassroots work in Minnesota by far, by the way. So you and your audience, you should clap to yourselves about how amazing you are compared to many of your competitors in that arena.
I don't know. Ben, our old mutual friend Walter Hudson, seems to disagree these days once he became a politician. So.
Well, I like Walter. I'm not at odds with him. That's sorry to hear, but you guys do great work.
It's so common for these people to get elected and go the wrong way, but it's not the first time we've seen that, right?
In Washington too, man. No matter who you vote for, you always get John McCain, as Tom Woods says. I hate to admit that, but it does seem to be the case more often than not.
That's right. All right,
all
right, buddy. Take care.
Take care, buddy. Have a good one, man.
All right, we'll be back, I think, on Thursday, guys. We're going to be doing a show. It looks like, what is my show on Thursday? I'm going to interview someone, okay? I am reaching out to a lot of the gubernatorial campaigns. That's not a joke. A bunch of these Republicans are avoiding me. Like, it's like they don't want to talk to me. Like, literally, it's pretty sad, to be honest with you. So we're going to talk to Billy Nord next Tuesday, which will be really interesting to me because I know very little about him, but he's a Democrat who actually wanted to be on the show. I think I'm going to reach out to the gentleman. What is his name? Mike something that's running for Newsom. Is it Mike Newsom? That's running for the Reform Party. I think he got the Forward Party. Let me see if I got that right. I'm going to reach out to him because he's on my social media. He's also from Lake Alamo. Am I forgetting the name? Okay, I'm totally forgetting the name. I think it's Mike Newsom. That's what I thought. Anyhow, another thing I am trying to do. Let me bring this up. I'll bring this up in the post show. If you are not a premium insider, I'm going to post a link here. This is only for those that are watching this live. If you're not watching this live, go to truthhurtsnews.com. Become a premium insider. You can go to truthhurtsnews.com and you can click on support us. You can watch the post show from there, which gives you access to locals. If you are also, you could go to the top of Rumble. Most of our audience watches on Rumble. You can click on join us there, and then you get access to our post show. It helps us out. This is what keeps us independent. It's the best way to do things. Also, what keeps us independent is great sponsors like Alpine Cabinetry in St. Cloud, Minnesota, and EliteGuardianMN.com. Once again, we got a concealed carry and home defense course coming up this Black Friday. I think that's November 28th. If you want to get your permit to carry or need to renew, that does qualify you for that. Radtrad says Lake Elmo, the upper middle class. You darn right. That's all about us Lake Elmonians, right? I like to say I'm on the other side of the tracks in Lake Elmo. Even Lake Elmo's got a trailer park, which is it's a joke. It's on a golf course. There you go. That's how we live. That's how we roll in Lake Elmo. Just so you guys know, my mentality is actually to be far away from the cities. Sometimes in marriage you got to compromise a little bit. Okay, Got to compromise. Not all of us wants to live on 40 acres, way off the beaten path. So you got to compromise. You got to live in Lake Elmo. I'll tell you one thing I didn't want to do. I didn't want to live inside the 494, 694 loop. That is too much city for this boy. All right. We'll go right to our post show for Premium Insiders. For everyone else, we should see you back here on Thursday. Take care.